Imagine living your entire life on a razor's edge. For a subsistence farmer in Latin America, like the main character in G.L. Fuentes' story, Lencho, success and failure are absolute. Your family's entire income for the year and their survival is tied to a single corn harvest. After working from sunrise to sunset to cultivate the fields, Lencho looks up and sees dark clouds gathering. When the heavy drops finally begin to fall, it is pure economic relief. To his crops, rain literally means life. But the weather is entirely indifferent to human needs. Within minutes, the wind shifts and the life-giving water turns solid. Huge hailstones, described in the story as falling like frozen pearls, begin to batter the fields. Look at the sheer kinetic force required to punch holes through the siding of a house. Now apply that exact violence to fragile, ripe corn stalks. In less than an hour, the storm eradicates every single plant Lencho has grown. When the ice clears, the reality sets in. There is no crop insurance. There are no savings. The neighbors suffered the same loss. Lencho and his family have hit a systemic dead end, facing a complete vacuum of hope. The practical, logical response to this kind of total financial ruin is despair. But Lencho's mind executes a rapid psychological pivot. He bypasses panic entirely and leans on an absolute, unyielding faith. He takes a deliberate action to solve an impossible economic crisis. He sits down, writes a letter, and addresses the envelope directly to God. The contents of the letter reveal how he views this relationship. He doesn't ask for spiritual comfort or strength. He demands exactly 100 pesos, the precise mathematical sum required to keep his family alive and buy the seeds to replant his fields. In an isolated environment devoid of any earthly safety net, absolute faith stops being an abstract theological concept. It functions as a vital, highly practical psychological survival mechanism. A few days later, that letter lands on a sorting desk inside a local, highly bureaucratic post office. When the postmaster inspects the envelope, his first reaction is a loud, cynical laugh at the absurdity of the address. As he opens it and reads the desperate terms of the farmer's invoice, the humor evaporates. It is replaced by a deep reverence for the sheer vulnerability sitting in his hands. This diagram illustrates pro-social resource pooling. Individuals voluntarily combine their limited assets to solve a localized crisis entirely too large for one person. Deeply moved, the postmaster triggers this network, convincing colleagues to surrender portions of their wages to help a stranger. They manage to collect a heavy stack of bills, but the mathematical reality of working-class wages means they simply cannot reach the target. They secure over half the money, but physically fall short of the demanded 100 pesos. Still, the postmaster places the collected bills into an envelope and signs it with a single word: God. He feels the quiet pride of someone who has successfully acted as an agent of divine intervention, fully anticipating the farmer's overwhelming gratitude. Human empathy is often numerically incomplete and flawed, but it remains the most practical bridge we have for answering impossible prayers. The following Sunday, Lencho returns to the post office. The postmaster watches from a distance. As he hands over the envelope, Lencho rips it open and counts the bills. This logic tree maps out exactly how Lencho processes the situation in real time. He starts with an immovable premise: God is infallible. Therefore, God cannot make a mathematical error. Because the earthly sum is incomplete, the logic tree forces him down a single inevitable branch. This rigid framework creates a massive blind spot. He cannot even entertain the idea of human charity. If God sent 100 pesos and only 70 arrived, the missing 30 could only disappear through human theft. Lencho feels zero gratitude. Instead, he marches to the window, asks for a pen and paper, and drafts a second letter to God. He demands the rest of the money, but explicitly asks God not to send it through the mail, accusing the very postal workers who sacrificed their wages of being a bunch of crooks. It is a quiet, brutal collision of two completely isolated realities. On one side, the invisible, quiet sacrifice of ordinary people trying to do good. On the other, the tragic rigidity of a man whose belief is so absolute it warps his reality. Absolute faith can provide the exact psychological armor a person needs to survive the unimaginable. But when those expectations become too rigid, they create a blindness that completely obscures the profound, everyday kindness of the human being standing right in front of us.